You're just a doormat, my parents sneered, gifting my sister's husband the Willow Creek home I paid for over 8 years. I'm Nora. Erased until I refused their invasion of my retreat home, and they called the cops on me. Stay for the truth of a quiet daughter's rebellion. What time is it where you're at? Share below. The gravel crunched under our shoes as Wyatt and I stepped out of the car and onto the warm soil of the orchard. Late July in Willow Creek always carried this quiet in the air, like nature was bracing for something to end or begin. I wasn't sure which applied to today. Wyatt adjusted his blazer and reached into the inside pocket. I watched as he tapped the envelope twice, habitually, $15,000, 0 cents. That was what we decided to give Amara and Silas as a wedding gift. That, plus nearly 1/3 of the total cost of this whole setup. My younger sister's dream wedding in the hills of the Cascades wasn't cheap, but Wyatt's real estate firm had hit a record quarter. I'd just landed a long-term marketing client. We could afford it, and after all, Amara was my only sibling. We walked toward the main archway, ivy curled around the stone columns like it had lived there for centuries. Fairy lights flickered from the orchard rows. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. My parents stood by the welcome table, beaming like royalty. My mother, Ellen, fussed with Dad's tie while he muttered something under his breath and half smiled. I watched them, taking it in. They looked younger, lighter, glowing almost. I couldn't remember them looking this joyful at my wedding. They'd smiled back then, sure, wished Wyatt and me a happy life, but they hadn't glowed. Not like this. Don't start, I muttered to myself. Wyatt gave my hand a little squeeze. You okay? I'm fine, I said, though I didn't look him in the eye. A woman with a clipboard directed us to the seating chart. My finger traced the printed names down the glass panel until I found it. Nora Herpin. I blinked. Close enough, I told myself. But when we reached the table, it wasn't close at all. Table 9 at the far back by the bar. No family in sight, just co-workers from Silas's app startup and some friends I didn't recognize. I hesitated. Wyatt whispered, "Want me to switch cards?" I shook my head and forced a smile. No, it's fine. It's her day. As we sat, I glanced toward the head table. My parents were already seated there, front and center, between Amara and Silas. My chair scraped a little as I pulled it out, and not a single head turned. Not even Mom's near began. And the room buzzed with toasts and laughter. Courses came and went. Wine was poured generously. I declined. Something in my gut twisted every time someone clinked a glass and shouted, "To the happy couple!" Then the microphone feedback cut the chatter. My mom stood up, straightened her dress, and tapped the glass. If we could have everyone's attention. People quieted instantly. Dad rose beside her. We just wanted to say thank you to everyone for celebrating our beloved daughter's new chapter. A hush settled. I felt my heart jump. Were they talking about me? I glanced around, then back at them. Watching Amara grow into the woman she is today, Dad continued, has been one of the greatest joys of our lives. A slow throb built in my temples. She's brought so much light, laughter, and love to our family, Mom added, voice trembling with emotion. Someone at another table whispered, "Oh, and so," she continued, reaching into her clutch, "we wanted to give her and Silas something to start this journey with. Something meaningful. I saw the envelope before I even registered what it was. We're gifting them the house," Mom said proudly, "our family home. It's theirs now." Gasps and applause. I heard claps, cheers, even a few teary sniffles. And I sat frozen. The house. The house. The one I had been paying the mortgage on for 8 years, quietly after Dad's hours were cut and Mom's back pain worsened. The house that still had my name tied to the escrow account, the insurance, the repairs. No warning, no conversation, no thank you. Amara burst into tears, throwing her arms around our parents. Silas grinned like he'd won the lottery. Maybe he had. I forced my lips into something that resembled a smile. My nails dug into my napkin under the table. Wyatt didn't say anything, just placed his hand on my knee. "I'm okay," I said softly. "Don't..." But I wasn't. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. I didn't touch my food. I just watched Amara glowing, Mom dabbing her eyes like she was proud of herself, Dad laughing like he hadn't missed my grad school ceremony because of a fishing trip. By the time dessert came, I'd had enough. "I need air," I told Wyatt, pushing back from the table. He stood, but I waved him off. Just 5 minutes, I walked down the gravel path away from the main tent, past the photo booth, toward the overlook where the photographers were staging more pictures. I stopped behind a hedge just before they could see me. There they were, Amara and Silas, posed on the porch of the house. My house. The photographer arranged them like a greeting card ad. "Okay, now hold up the key together." They both turned to face the camera. Silas fished something out of his pocket. My breath caught. They lifted the silver house key like it was a damn trophy, like I had never existed. I didn't say a word during the drive home. Wyatt kept glancing at me like he was waiting for the dam to break, for the screaming, the tears, the explosion that, if I were another woman, might have come right then and there. But all I could do was sit stiffly, arms folded, watching the tree-lined road blur past the window. When we pulled into our apartment's garage, I got out without a sound, Waitley by the door. The hum of the fridge was the only noise in the apartment. I headed to the bedroom, peeled off the dress, hung it carefully, then sat down on the edge of the bed. Wyatt hovered in the doorway. "You want to talk about it?" I shook my head. "I'm fine." He stayed quiet for a beat. "Nora, I should have seen it coming," I said, cutting him off, because somewhere deep down I had maybe not the key, not the speech, but I'd felt it building for years, the little slights, the way I disappeared in a room full of my own family. I just hadn't expected the slap to come with applause. The next week passed in a strange kind of haze. I went through the motions, client calls, spreadsheets, brand reviews, but my mind wasn't really there. Every time someone mentioned weddings or family, it was like someone dragging a fork across a plate in my head. Then, on Tuesday, it arrived. A pale blue envelope tucked between bills and a coupon flyer. Wyatt brought it in and tossed it on the counter. "Looks like a thank you note." I stared at the cursive writing, Wyatt, read, and guest. I opened it. Inside was a card with silver foil lettering, "Thank you for being part of our dream day," and a short message scrawled in Amara's signature, bubbly handwriting. "Thank you so much for your generous gift and for helping make our wedding so magical. We'll always remember your kindness. Love, Amara and Silas." No mention of me. Not even once. I read it twice. My eyes scanned every line, searching for the possibility that maybe I'd missed something, that surely she hadn't just thanked Wyatt, that I, who had planned, paid, and stayed silent, wasn't just guest, but I was. Wyatt came over, leaned on the counter, arms folded. "You okay?" I gave him a look. He sighed. "Nora, I know you don't want to hear it, but maybe it's time to stop making excuses for them." I stayed quiet. "You've done more for them than most people would. You paid their mortgage, you show up for every birthday, every holiday, even when they forget yours and they act like you're what, some neighbor who drops by out of politeness?" I opened my mouth to defend them. "They mean well," I started. He raised an eyebrow. "Do they?" I closed my mouth. The words felt hollow before I even said them. "Why do I always rush to defend people who forget me so easily?" I murmured. Wyatt didn't answer. He just reached over and squeezed my shoulder. Later, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning in slow, deliberate circles. My mind wandered. No, it unraveled. Threads pulling back through years I hadn't dared look at closely before. My business school graduation. I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through. And when I walked across that stage, my parents handed me a check. $75.00, and a card that said, "So proud. Love, Mom and Dad." 2 years later, Amara graduated with a marketing degree from a community college. They gifted her a brand new Honda with a giant bow and a party at the River House. I'd told myself money was tight back then, that maybe they'd finally gotten a bonus or some tax refund the year she graduated. I'd wanted to believe that, but what if it wasn't that? What if I was just less wanted? What if I was always the contingency plan, never the favorite? I rolled onto my side and shut my eyes. Sleep didn't come. Thursday morning, I walked into the office early, hoping burying myself in client files would keep the spiral at bay. It didn't. By mid-morning, I was sitting across from a small business owner going over a standard financial review. He was trying to sort out a partnership dissolution and asked casually, "Hey, if I paid half the mortgage for the last 4 years, But the deed's in her name. Do I get anything back if we split? I blinked. My throat tightened. Dee waited, pen in hand. If it's not in your name, I said slowly. Legally, it gets complicated. I heard my own words like they were meant for me. 8 years. 8 years of writing checks, transferring funds, taking on the upkeep when Mom couldn't handle it and Dad was between gigs. Never once had I asked to be added to the title. I'd just assumed they knew that they remembered. They were decent. Decent people don't erase your name from a card. Don't call your partner and guest. Don't take what you've paid for and hand it off like a door prize. Back at my desk, I opened the real estate records database. It took 6 minutes to confirm what I already knew. The house had always been in their names, Victor and Ellen Reed. No cosigner, no amendment, and last week the deed had been officially transferred to Silas and Amara Wells. Recorded, notarized, final. I sat there for a long time, not moving, not thinking. Eventually, I opened my drawer, pulled out a Post-it, and scribbled something on it. I wasn't part of the gift because I was the one who paid for it. That night, when the phone rang and I saw my mother's name, I already knew it wasn't going to be an apology. The phone rang twice before I picked up. "Hi, sweetheart," Mom chirped, as if she hadn't just watched me disappear from her daughter's wedding in stunned silence. "It's been too long. Amara and Silas just got back from Fiji. We're having dinner this Friday, just the 6 of us. Du and Wyatt should come." Her voice was all frosting. No cake. I waited a beat. "Dinner?" I said flatly. "Yes, we'll make that lemon chicken you love. Come around 4. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe some broken part of me still wanted an explanation. Hoped they'd admit they'd gone too far, that this dinner would be a peace offering, a conversation, a chance to acknowledge what they did. But deep down, I knew better. Friday came with a gray chill that didn't quite match the calendar. Willow Creek was shifting into autumn. The leaves hadn't fully turned, but the breeze carried the first hints of change. Wyatt and I drove in silence until we hit the turnoff. I stared at the familiar mailbox. The house looked the same and completely different. There were new curtains in the front window, gray lace where Mom's daisy valances used to hang. The doormat read, "The Wells Est." 2022. Amara's blue running shoes were parked by the door, lined up to Eastside Silas oversized sneakers. I stood on the porch and stared at the silver knocker I'd helped Mom polish every 4th of July growing up. "It's like I never lived here at all," I whispered. Inside, the smell hit me first. It wasn't just the chicken. It was the candle. Lavender breeze, Amara's favorite. Mom used to burn citrus blossom. The living room had been rearranged, my father's old recliner gone, a sleek navy sectional now curved under the window. Dinner was already served when we stepped in. My mom kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong. "You look tired, honey. Working too much?" Amara beamed from her seat, radiant in a cream sweater that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Silas gave me a nod like we were old buddies. Wyatt and I took the only 2 remaining seats, one of which used to be my father's. I pushed a green bean around my plate, waiting. It didn't take long. "Well," Mom said, setting down her fork delicately, "now that Amara and Silas have their own space, your father and I have been thinking." My gut tightened. Dad jumped in. "We'd like to move into your cabin." My brain stalled. "What?" "You know," he continued casually, "the little house you bought up in Cedar Hills. It's perfect for us. Quiet, single story, close to our club." "You want to move into my home?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Well, it's not like you use it full time," Mom said, smiling too brightly. "And it's just sitting there most weeks," Amara added. "You and Wyatt could live together, couldn't you?" Wyatt's jaw clenched. I stared at them, for my mother's hopeful expression, my father's expectant nod, my sister's smug little half-smile. It hit me. They hadn't invited me to dinner for closure or reconciliation. This wasn't about family. This was about acquiring the next thing I built. Thus, I set my fork down. "So, let me get this straight," I said slowly, calmly. "You gave away the house I paid the mortgage on for 8 years, and now you expect to move into the one I actually own, Nora?" "Don't be so harsh," Mom said. "We're not taking it, just living there. You didn't even ask. You decided like always." "You're being dramatic," Dad muttered. "No," I said, my voice sharper. I'm finally being honest. Amara slammed her fork down. You've always been jealous. You never liked when I got more attention, more help. You act like you're so noble, but you've been bitter since college. That's why they love me more. I never made them feel guilty for it. My breath caught. And just like that, there it was, out in the open, what I'd ne'er dared say. She screamed across a table set with our mother's best china. They love you more, I repeated softly. Nobody denied it, not even them. Wyatt reached under the table, took my hand. I stood up. If they love you so much, maybe they can live with you. I pushed back my chair. Wyatt followed. Nobody moved to stop us. As I shut the door behind me, I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. I didn't say much on the ride home that night. Wyatt didn't push. The car was silent except for the low hum of the heater kicking in. It had dipped into the 50s, the kind of chill that settled into your bones more than your skin. At home, I dropped my purse on the side table and slipped off my shoes. My hands moved on autopilot, tidying the pillows, opening the fridge just to stare. But inside, everything had shifted. The guilt that usually crept in after a family confrontation wasn't there, not this time. Just a strange clarity, like something had finally snapped back into place. For the next few days, I buried myself in work. I let the office eat me whole. Client calls, financial audits, budget forecasting for a small coffee shop downtown. It was easier to focus on someone else's numbers than my own thoughts. That Monday, I took the day off. I wanted a break before quarterlies started rolling in. I made breakfast, washed the windows, let the quiet stretch long. Then my phone buzzed. Motion detected at your property. My eyes locked onto the notification. Cedar Hills, the retreat home. Seconds later, another Anotra buzz. This time, a call. Unknown number, but I knew what it was. This is Tara from Pacific Sentinel Security. Are you the homeowner of 417 Maple Lane? I am. We had a motion alert. 2 individuals entered using a key. Their names match a Victor and Ellen Reed. Can you confirm authorization? I stared at the floor. They used a key. Yes, ma'am. That key was not given for that purpose. Do you want us to alert local law enforcement? Yes, I said calmly. I want them removed. By the time I hung up, Wyatt was standing in the doorway. What happened? Their Habit's house, he blurred out of the gap. No. They used a key like they belonged there. 15 minutes later, we were on the highway. Leaves blurred outside the window, gold and rust-colored leaves against the early September sky. My thoughts spiraled. Past birthdays skipped, promises broken. The way Amara had thrown her words like knives just a week earlier. You don't know how to share. This wasn't about sharing. It never had been. They didn't think they were taking. They thought it was theirs to begin with. We pulled up just past noon. The gravel crunched under the tires as we approached the porch. And there they were, my parents, sitting like squatters beside a stack of plastic bins, a cardboard box labeled linens, a bag from Target. My mom was sipping from a travel mug. My dad stood when he saw us as if this was some kind of reunion. There you are, he said. We figured you'd come around. I got out slowly, walked right past him. The sheriff's car was decadence nearby. The deputy stood, waiting, arms folded. They don't have permission to be here, I told him. My mother's mug clinked sharply against the wood as she stood. What are you doing? She snapped. After everything we've done for you, how can you be so ungrateful? I repeated, almost laughing. You handed away my childhood home like a door prize. Now you think you're entitled to my retreat property? My father stepped forward. It's just temporary. That's your problem, I said coldly. You never ask. You assume, you take. Nora, my mom's voice broke into something shriller. We are your parents. We raised you. We supported you. What exactly did you support? I cut in. Because I remember my 21st birthday dinner being skipped for Amara's dance recital. I remember paying off your house when you were behind on taxes, and I remember getting a $75.00 check for business school graduation while you bought her a car. Her face twitched. That was a different time. No, it was always the same time. I just kept pretending it wasn't. The deputy cleared his throat. Do you want to press charges, ma'am? My father looked stricken. Don't do this. I looked between them, all the years layering like sediment, the excuses, the favoritism, the rebranded manipulation they called family. No, I said. No charges, but I want them off the property today. Understood, the deputy said. We can escort them to the station for holding, standard for trespass mediation. My mother gasped. You're sending us to jail? Maybe sitting still will make you think, I replied. By the time they were seated in the back of the squad car, Wyatt was loading their things into the trunk of our car. We drove straight to a local storage facility and prepaid a unit for 45 days. That was more than they deserved. But I wasn't trying to be cruel. Just done. We returned home late that afternoon. The apartment was quiet. I dropped the keys on the desk and sat down. The deed to the Cedar Hills house was right there under a stack of utility bills. I picked it up, ran my fingers across the seal. I've paid for everything, I murmured. Except peace. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. My body went through the motions, washed my face, changed into pajamas, curled up next to Wyatt, but my mind spun like a wheel with no brakes. Even as I shut my eyes, I saw my parents' faces as the officers asked them to leave my property. I remembered the click of their car trunk, the shuffle of their bags, the silence they left behind like a smoke trail. But I was about to learn. When you set boundaries, some people see it as war. 4 days later, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. The morning sun barely pierced the curtains, but the light from the screen stabbed harder than any glare. 19 missed calls, 16 voicemails, more texts than I cared to count, all from cousins, aunts, even a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in years. And then I saw it. A face post from Ellen. Her profile photo, a cropped wedding shot with Amara, the caption read, "In our golden years we've been cast out by our own daughter, treated like criminals. All we ever did was love her." Below that, 2 photos. One of my parents sitting hunched over on my porch steps, suitcases by their feet like they were stranded refugees. Another zoomed in of the officer's cruiser in the background. She had taken those before they were escorted away. The comments came in waves. She kicked them out. How heartless. Kids today have no soul. My son would never, one relative wrote. This is what happens when you marry a man who wants to isolate you. She's not herself anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't text back. I just sat there, phone in hand, letting the words hit like tiny darts. Then came the private messages. Aunt Marissa. Your mom is devastated. She says you won't even let them stay in the little cottage. Isn't that the one you never use? A childhood friend? I don't know what's going on with you, but I miss the old Nora. The one who always put family first. Someone else, you think a house matters more than your own parents? Shh. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to type 1,000 truths. I could have said I paid for that house. I was never asked, only assumed. I could have attached the mortgage statement, the title, the receipts from every sleepless weekend I worked extra just to afford that cabin, but I didn't. Instead, I turned the phone face down and stream. Wyatt was already in the kitchen scrambling eggs. He looked up when I entered, reading my face instantly. You saw it, he said. I nodded. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked over. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Not unless you want to. I sat at the counter. It's not just the post. It's that so many people believe it without even asking. He reached into the drawer beside the fridge, pulled out a thin manila folder and placed it in front of me. Inside, printouts of emails, screenshots, payment confirmations, tax records, everything. I've been saving these for years, he said, in case you ever needed to remember what's real. I looked down at my own signature on dozens of documents. I had made all the payments. I had paid all the taxes. It was my name that bought peace, even when they treated it like wallpaper meant to fade into the background. Later that afternoon, I headed to the office. I needed to move to breathe something that didn't smell like betrayal. But walking past the glass conference room, I saw Sophie, the new intern, being scolded by one of the senior partners. She stood stiff, arms behind her back, taking every word without blinking. My chest tightened. That had been me once, silent, accommodating, careful, never to rock the boat. I had worked holidays, missed funerals, swallowed slights so sharp they left splinters in my pride. Because back then, I thought silence was strength. But as I watched Sophie nod and apologize for something that wasn't even her fault, I saw it differently. Silence wasn't strength. It was survival, and it kept you small. That night, back at home, I made a cup of tea and sat at the dining table. Wyatt was grading client reports in the living room, occasionally looking up at me, his eyes patient and steady. I opened my laptop. It didn't go to Facebook right away. I started in Word, typed, deleted, typed again. Then I started over. By midnight, I had 3 paragraphs, then 6, then a dozen. I recounted the facts, not with venom, but with precision. The years I paid the mortgage, the money I poured into the cabin, the times I was told to just understand when Amare got more louder and first. I didn't name call. I didn't retaliate. I ended the draft with one sentence. If you want the whole truth, I'll tell it, but you better be ready for it. I stared at the cursor, blinking after that line. It wasn't shaking. Neither was I. I didn't close the laptop right away. I sat there in the dim glow of the screen, watching my own words stare back at me. They weren't laced with bitterness or coated in sugar, just the truth, calm, unfiltered, and long overdue. By morning, the storm had rolled in, not the wild kind with thunder and lightning, but the quiet type that knocks once, twice, then Finnegan's not. My inbox was full. Cousins, old friends, even people I hadn't spoken to in years, all weighing in. I didn't know you paid for the house, one cousin messaged. That changes everything. Some of the nastier comments under Mom's viral post had vanished, like people were quietly trying to backpedal now that receipts were involved. No apology from Amara, of course. No explanation from Mom. Silence speaks, and in my family it always said, "You don't matter enough to deserve an answer." I was halfway through a cup of coffee when the email came. It was from a name I barely remembered. Simon Ward. He used to be the family's estate lawyer. I clicked it open, half expecting a form letter, but it was personal. Miss Harpin, I came across your Facebook post, and I believe there's something you should be aware of. My stomach tightened. In 2015, the email continued, your parents initiated a draft to transfer ownership of the family home into your name. It was never finalized. In 2017, however, the deed was reassigned to another beneficiary, your sister. No legal notice was required as the property was still under joint parental ownership at the time. I reread that paragraph at least 5 times. They had planned to give it to me. At one point they meant to, but then they changed their minds quietly without a word. I stared at the wall for a while, letting that sink in. Then I opened a new browser tab and logged into the county records portal. Just a hunch. But when I searched the Cedar Hills address, my retreat home, there it was. A title search inquiry from my mother's name, dated 3 weeks ago. They were checking the legal status, preparing maybe to try again. The betrayal didn't feel like a stab anymore. It felt like a spreadsheet, a calculated, columned decision. Long game manipulation built on the assumption that I'd never question it. I stood up, crossed the apartment to the hallway closet, and pulled down a black accordion file. The label was smudged, but still visible. Mortgage 20162-023. Inside were years of documentation, loan statements, receipts, proof of every transfer, every dime I'd moved from my personal account to keep the roof over our heads, every dollar I thought I was investing into family. I laid them all out on the dining table, sheet by sheet. By late afternoon, I had scanned and organized everything into digital folders, labeled, time-stamped, undeniable. Then I sat back at my laptop and drafted a second post. No emotion this time, just facts, screenshots, PDF attachments, the math. I laid it all out. The mortgage terms, the automatic payments, the home repair expenses. At the bottom, I typed one line. For years, I paid in silence. Now, I present the math. I hovered over post, fingers stilled, breath even. Just as I was about to click, my phone buzzed. Wyatt. You might want to see what Amara just posted. I opened the app and saw my sister, hair curled, makeup flawless, standing in front of the porch at my retreat home. My porch, captioned in pastel script, home is where the heart is. My fingers curled into a fist before I even realized it. I didn't scroll. I stared. There she was, Amara, glowing in soft morning light, holding a mug I recognized. My mug, the one I'd bought from that little shop in Cedar Hills, hand-thrown pottery with the green glaze that reminded me of the lake. Her caption read, Peaceful weekend at the lake house. Grateful for family. I kept looking. Another photo. Amara and Ellen side by side, laughing on the porch swing I had installed myself during that brutal summer, staining wood under the sun until my palms blistered. The background gave them away. The birdhouse Wyatt had mounted on the pine tree, the wild rosemary we planted near the stairs, the welcome mat I never replaced after Mom called it too plain. It was still there, like I'd never left. I didn't comment, didn't text, didn't throw anything. His office smelled like paper and carpet cleaner. He offered coffee. I declined. I slid a manila envelope across the desk, thick with receipts, scanned documents, and mortgage summaries. He leafed through them, nodding as he scanned key points. "This is thorough," he said. "We could file for injunctive relief if they attempt any claim or entry again." "I want more than that," I said, his brow arched slightly. "I want a cease and desist letter," I added, my voice flat. "Legally binding, specific language directly to Ellen and Amara, no room for misunderstanding." He didn't blink. Done. That evening, Wyatt came home carrying 2 grocery bags and a look I'd learned to read. Quiet, but urgent. "There's something you need to hear," he said as he set the bags down. He pulled out his phone, tapped around, and handed it to me. The recording was dated 5 months ago. I remembered that weekend. He'd stepped out to call her after a strange voicemail about family plans. Her voice filled the room. "Nora's always been the workhorse. That's her role. Amara deserves comfort. She's had a harder time emotionally. You know that." I didn't flinch. Wyatt sat beside me, unsure whether to say anything. I handed the phone back. "We'll use that." The next morning I sat down with my laptop, no emotion this time, just precision. I uploaded the second post. First, screenshots of bank transfers labeled by year, then PDFs of the mortgage agreement, then the title logs showing the inquiry into my retreat property. I ended with the audio. Beneath it I wrote, "This isn't revenge. This is clarity. I won't be rewritten." I hit post. Within hours, the reactions rolled in. Messages, shares, support from people I barely knew. "You don't owe them anything," one woman commented. "Thank you for showing your receipts," another wrote. "So many of us stay quiet. We shouldn't have to." Some tried to defend Ellen and Amara until they heard the clip. I didn't reply to anyone. I just let it sit. Truth has its own volume. By evening, Amara finally broke her silence. She posted a screenshot of my post with a caption, "We never wanted this to go public. But if you want public, fine, let's talk legal." Ellen commented right below it, "She'll regret this." I closed my phone, then smiled, because by then I already had the final piece I needed, and they had no idea. The morning sun cut across the floor of my apartment like a blade. I sat at the dining table, sipping lukewarm coffee, waiting. It didn't take long. At exactly 9:15 a.m., Simon Ward forwarded me the scanned letter we'd finalized together 3 days ago. Subject line. Delisted. The cease and desist had gone out by courier and email. It addressed Amara formally, Ms. Amara Ree Wells, and outlined clear legal terms: immediate removal of all social media content referencing the Cedar Hills property, full return of all copies of the house key, and an explicit warning regarding the fraudulent title inquiry logged in my name. The closing paragraph, repeated me in a little time, read, "Should any further attempts at misrepresentation or possession be made, the undersigned reserves the right to pursue damages and full injunctive relief under state and federal law." Enclosed with the letter were scanned PFFs, proof of the title search attempts, and evidence Ellen and Amara had accessed my mortgage files using old personal information. They had tried to start a transfer quietly, illegally, under my nose. I leaned back and whispered to the ceiling, "You should have known better." By noon, the family group chat detonated. It started with a message from Aunt Evelyn. "Is this true?" She attached a screenshot of my post, followed by a screenshot of the letter which someone had leaked. I didn't ask who. Uncle Calvin chimed in next. Nora did what she had to, proud of her for standing up for herself. That was when Amara left the chat. Ellen responded in the form of a voice memo. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I did it for the family, for the image, for you girls to be close. If we look like we're struggling, people talk. If Amara looks like she's lacking, she spirals. I thought we were doing what's best for everyone." I didn't reply. Let them sit in the silence they'd always handed to me. The call from Amara came at 5:30 p.m. I stared at the name glowing on my phone. I picked up. "You really want to drag our family name through court?" she said immediately. "It's already there," I answered. "I'm just finally in the room." She paused long enough for me to hear the tension in her breath. "You're choosing property over people, Nora." "No," I said slowly, calmly. "I'm choosing peace over manipulation." Another pause. Then the line went dead. I didn't call back. The next day at work, we had a team lunch for our new intern project. We sat in the lounge conference room. Cheap chairs, paper plates, someone's homemade brownies sweating through foil. It was nothing fancy, but when the intern handed me a napkin with a little name tag taped to it, I froze, Nora. It read. Spelt right. The handwriting was neat, not hurried, not second-guessed. I stared at it a little longer than I should have. For the first time, my name wasn't misspelled, not forgotten, not skipped, just seen. I folded the napkin and slipped it into my purse without saying a word. That evening, Simon emailed again. 1-bedroom, month-to-month lease. No note from them, no challenge, just quiet compliance. As for Amara, silent, her social feeds wiped clean. No weekend getaways, no mugs, no lakeside photo shoots. I didn't need an audience to feel victorious. Violence in this case was the reward. The final voicemail came that night, was from Ellen. "Nora, we need to talk. We know we messed up. Please just talk to us." I didn't save it. I didn't replay it. I deleted it. And that, I realized, was the first real boundary I had ever held with them. The voicemail was gone, deleted, but because I wanted to forget, but because I no longer needed to remember it on their terms. In the weeks that followed, life didn't erupt into something dramatic or cinematic. It quieted. And for once, that felt like a reward. I went back to work. I made dinner with Wyatt most nights, chicken stir-fry one evening, lentil soup the next. We watched documentaries about national parks and argued about whether we'd ever go camping. Him, yes. Me, hard pass. We laughed more than we used to, not because things were suddenly perfect, but because the air was finally clear. On a crisp Saturday morning, I drove out to Cedar Hills. The retreat home, the one I'd fought for, the one I almost lost, was now rented by a traveling writer named June. She greeted me on the porch with a smile that didn't need explanation. Inside, the space had shifted. A few of her things dotted the room, books on the coffee table, a vintage typewriter by the window, but it still smelled faintly of lemon oil and pine, the way I liked it. As I walked her through the drawer set up in the kitchen, she paused. "These napkins," she said, unfolding one gently. "They're linen, right? Handmade?" "Yeah." I nodded. "They were a gift. I left them behind once. Now, they stay." She smiled and ran her fingers over the stitching. "It feels like someone really lived here." I nodded again, softer this time. They did. The next week, an email from Amara landed in my inbox. Subject, clearing the air. It was a few stiff paragraphs dressed in civility. No names of wrongdoing, just a vague admission of regret over how things unfolded. A line about wanting to preserve peace. Not once did she say sorry. I didn't reply. The day after that, a bouquet of roses arrived at my office. No card. I turned to our receptionist and gestured toward the flowers. "They're not for me," I said without blinking. "You can keep them." She blinked. "Are you sure? They're beautiful." "They're not mine to keep. They're someone else's performance." She took them, and I returned to my desk. On a rainy Wednesday, I had lunch with one of my longest clients, Lorraine, a retired professor with a sharp tongue and sharper eyes. She'd been widowed for 12 years, but still wore her gold band like it was armor. Over coffee, she said it out of nowhere. "You always did your job quietly, Nora. But I've watched you. You never let them erase you." It landed heavier than I expected, not because it was a compliment, but because it came from someone who didn't flatter easily. I smiled, swallowing a lump I hadn't realized was rising. "Thank you," I said. "That means more than you know." A few days later, I passed by a storefront in Willow Creek, glass windows streaked with early autumn drizzle, and caught my reflection. Not a villain, not a victim, just me. Hair a little windswept, eyes less tired than they used to be, a woman who no longer lived to be chosen. a woman who chose herself. In my head, I could hear it clearly. They called me ungrateful. But what they really meant was, you stopped giving us everything we asked for. That wasn't betrayal. That was boundaries. At the office, I began mentoring a new junior hire, Amara, fresh out of grad school. Quiet, capable, a little too quick to apologize. One afternoon, I walked past her desk and saw her face fall as a partner took credit for her work. I stopped, turned back. "Hey," I said firmly but gently. "I saw the report. You did good work. Next time you bring it to the meeting yourself." Her eyes widened, unsure how to respond, but I smiled. "Trust me, speak up early. It saves years." That night, I placed the house key, their trophy, my burden, into a wooden box labeled "Things I Survived." For the first time, I kept it locked away. Nora's fight shows you can overcome those who dim your light. Share your story of claiming your worth below.